Contempt, contempt, contempt. The contempt hearings are not going away, despite what the Trump regime and his DOJ might want to do in the federal case involving the Alien Tort Claims Case Act, where Donald Trump sent the migrants to El Salvador to go into that concentration camp after Judge Boasberg had issued his order, do not allow them to go. And Judge Boasberg simply wanted to ensure that the rights of human beings were protected, and the things that Boasberg was ultimately worried about several months ago. It feels like it was almost a year ago at this point, although in Trump years, we aged in dog years, like 15 years ago, but it was several months ago, was exactly what happened. These subhuman conditions where human beings were tortured based on this ambiguous relationship between the United States and the dictator of El Salvador, Bukele, that resulted in this torture, which was one of the first things that the Trump regime wanted to do. Obviously, that manifests with Abrego Garcia, one of the more high-profile situations where that case is still ongoing in both the Middle District of Tennessee, as well as the Maryland federal courtroom as well. And you have Abrego Garcia in those cases making significant motions about just how the Trump regime continues to lie about everything. Like, they continue to double down on their contemptuous behavior with Abrego Garcia, right? It's like the government of Costa Rica said they'll take Abrego Garcia, but the Trump regime lied and said, Costa Rica said they won't do it. We have to send him to Liberia or to other countries in Africa. And Abrego's like, nah, they're going to kill me if I go there. And Costa Rica says they'll take me. And the leader of Costa Rica said, we'll take you. And so the Trump regime, and even in the spin-offs, the other cases that relate to the original case with the migrants being sent to Venezuela, the contemptuous behavior continues. So Judge Boasberg has now been a target of MAGA. Just goes to show you. I mean, Boasberg, Yale law grad, someone who did everything right his career, viewed as a very centrist guy, reasonable, rational, careful. He was a federal judge in the intelligence court. He led the intelligence court. I mean, just the guy's got an impeccable record. But because he's asserted himself based on what the law is, he's someone who the Trump regime attacked. In any event, Judge Boasberg, his rulings have gone up and down and up and down. And he's like, I'm not going to just give up the fact that the Trump regime and these DOJ officers engaged in conduct that merits contempt before this court. And there could be criminal contempt taking place. So Judge Boasberg earlier in the week ordered submissions on how the court's inquiry regarding a potential contempt referral should proceed, including the names of possible witnesses and the dates for hearings. And then we have, as Judge Boasberg considered how to move forward with contempt, plaintiffs provide a list of the names of potential witnesses, by the way, including Emile Beauvais, who's now a federal judge on the Third Circuit, because we've seen his emails, we've seen his messages where he was intimately involved in basically threatening others at the DOJ. If you don't, violate the court's order, I'm going to F you up, F the judges, F the courts. That's who now is running the third, who's a federal judge in the circuit court. A guy who said, F the judges. So the plaintiffs responded. They gave a list of the people who they want to see as witnesses in contempt proceedings. Former acting deputy director, Erez Ruvini, deputy assistant director, Drew Ensign, who we see at all of these cases. Other familiar names is Yaakov Roth, we see at a lot of hearings. Former principal deputy attorney general, Emile Beauvais. I want to bring in Harry Litman of the Talking Feds YouTube channel, Talking Feds podcast, and Substack. Harry, what's going on? Like, why does Boasberg have this back? I know there was appeals. There was potential en banc. There's a lot of confusing procedure here, but Boasberg's got the case now again, and he feels that he's able to go and pursue the contempt proceeding now. What's going on?
Man, does he ever. And look, Ben, in a sense, he needs this like a hole in the head. It's months ago. Remember when it first happened? You had a series of excuses from the administration. It's too late. You don't have jurisdiction. Abrego Garcia is a terrible criminal. We're going to invoke state secrets doctrine. And then really, finally, what they said is just like, just let it go already, etc. That's what they were hoping for. And Boasberg has been dogged, fighting through this again and again and again. You ask why he hasn't now after many months. It was the opinion last week from the DC Circuit and I think the media here largely whiffed on it. They technically affirmed a panel opinion in which two Trump judges had paralyzed, had entered a stay, keeping him from going forward. And a separate opinion by the progressive judges on that court makes this clear. That opinion no longer had any practical force, and by affirming, it basically gave nothing for the Supreme Court to review, and it sent it back to him and revived the possible contempt. Why is he doing it? Look, he's the chief judge of the district court. You gave some of his bona fides. Can I just add, he's the law school roommate of Brett Kavanaugh. This guy is completely respected, even though now he's been automatically put in the, MAGA Villains Hall of Fame. But he was the chief judge for the court that spent 3 years adjudicating all of these cases, biggest operation in the history of the Department of Justice, seeing face to face the January 6 offenders, marauders, insurrectionists, and what really deep evil people they were and what they were trying to do, only to have the whole thing wiped out with a stroke of a pen a few hours after Trump took office. And since having again and again all these kinds of maneuvers and squirreliness and not full candor, etc., from Team Trump. It was interesting last week you mentioned Eric Siebert. So first of all, he is the figure, here who did the honorable thing and was fired for it. In the court last week, you had an incredible sort of murderer's row of lawyers, Michael Dreeben, Pat Fitzgerald, and Comey. And then on the DOJ side, really, a lackluster at best group with Lindsay Halligan in the middle. But Boasberg is not going to let this go. And you're right. The only thing he could be doing here is criminal contempt. Bove complicates things hugely. Plaintiffs want to question him. I don't see that happening. But the Erez Ruveni piece, which you mentioned, Erez Ruveni is the guy who was fired because he did what? Told the truth to a question from the court. Was Abrego Garcia sent down in violation of an extant court order? Just a fact, a legal fact that any honorable litigant would simply fess up to. For that reason, Pam Bondi fired him for not vigorously representing the interests of the president, whatever that could possibly mean. After he's fired, guess what? He's a whistleblower, and I mean an official one. He's filed a whole bunch of information. It's protected, etc. He will testify before Boasberg. And what will he say? I think it's pretty clear what he'll say. Boasberg gave this order, and Emile Bove back at the department said, we may have to say, fuck you to the courts. And also, I think even worse, those planes are going to land. Meaning, of course, it doesn't matter what the courts say. And by the way, to complicate things further, Bove at his confirmation hearings said he never instructed people to disregard court orders. Ruveni is going to say the exact opposite. Also, he doesn't remember using the F word, which as a defense attorney, is the most frequent instance of perjury, saying I don't recall. But I mean, he's going to be front and center here, even though he's on the court. And, Boasberg is just not going to let it go. And he shouldn't. If he finds contempt, and I think he is likely to, if nothing else, it means that, people go back in history and see this administration and know that it came right out of the box with an effort to be insubordinate, ignore court obligations, essentially act like dictators. And that's the sort of value here. And, you know, Boasberg has had all kinds of crap from the MAGA crowd. His daughter has gotten the Domino's treatment. His daughter, the MAGA special of having a Domino's pizza show up at the door that you didn't order, and a way of saying, we know where you live. You know, they've made it very hard for him, and he's doing the total stand-up thing for his court, as well as, by the way, for the country and for history. So he's not letting this go. There'll be huge problems, trying to get Beauvais or others to testify, what possible remedy, and would it be meaningful? But the basic fact that God damn it, they came out of the box in contempt, ready to just violate court orders because of this political imperative of Trump's immigration initiative. That's big stuff, and we should all be really happy that Jeb Boasberg is on the case and is not going away.
Really happy about that. And it just shows you, again, that we need to see more Jeb Boasbergs out there. And look, we see it with Judge Zinnes. We see it with Judge Ellis. We see it with Trump-appointed judges. The Trump-appointed judge in Texas, appointed in 2019, who ruled against Donald Trump on the, saying, look, the DOJ, you said you were doing racist Texas maps. Like, I may be a Trump guy, but I can support memos that say do a racist gerrymandered map. He's like, it's against the law. I'm sorry. What do you want me to tell you? The Trump appointed judge in Portland, Oregon. I think what's important to note is that this is at the district court level and at the circuit court level. The Trump losses are happening from Trump judges, George W. Bush, George H.W. Bush, Clinton, Obama, Biden, and even some Reagan judges who are still around. So they're doing their job. The circuit court, I would give district court judges an A-. I would give circuit court judges about a B+. And there were some district, I'm giving in the aggregate. I would give the Supreme Court an F, and if there was a lower score than an F, I would give him a no-show, but I'd give him an F. And that's really where the problem has been, is that they've then used their procedural powers to, on the shadow docket, block so much of the right work that bipartisan judges are doing at the district court level. And that's something that I think going into, we knew this Supreme Court was atrocious. We knew they were extremists. We knew from their overturning of Roe. We knew from their granting Trump absolute immunity. But to see them in this moment fully embrace fascism, and you contrast that, say, with like the Brazil Supreme Court, where you have Jair Bolsonaro going to jail for the rest of his life for his insurrection. You look around and go, man, our Supreme Court used to be the model for the rest of the world of what you follow. And now our Supreme Court is the model for what you throw out or you puke if you swallow. What do you make of it before we go?
All true, but 2 points. First, just to this district court thing, it's really, I think, building steam. You had honorable district court judges standing up, but there's a coalescing effect, I think, at this point. Ben, just last week, in one day, 3 different district court judges essentially said, I don't believe you anymore, you DOJ. That's it's a heartbreaking development for former DOJers like me, but man, they are increasingly emboldened. They tiptoe to the point of saying something they never said before, which is DOJ can't be trusted. And that was because, indeed, they didn't say it before because DOJ could be trusted, and now it can't. And I think the bloom is off the rose, or however you put it, that, district courts are the ones who see face to face the people show up and give them all kinds of crap, or, last week in Chicago, again, you were supposed to have the person most knowledgeable, and they just sent somebody who'd had a 5-minute Zoom call, pull all these tricks. That's just point one that I want to mention. It's really kind of reinforcing more and more. And then point 2, shadow docket, terrible rulings, true. But right now, the case of Chicago versus Illinois v. Trump is up there in that very posture when the judge in Chicago, Sarah, one of the people who in fact said, I don't think we can trust you anymore, DOJ. And then the court above her, the Court of Appeals, Seventh Circuit, affirmed. It goes to the Supreme Court. And this is the one I said was a real moment of truth, because if they greenlight what the administration wants to do, it could have all kinds of implications for other powers, including corruption of the elections. And to everyone's surprise, they issued this supplementary order saying, tell us about this little statutory language. And if they go in that direction, they will, among other things, I think, foil this really important effort to get huge deference from the from the court to the administration. The administration, everyone's now briefed it, and it's now been served up for over a week. Don't know what's happening there in the Supreme Court, but it may be the rare case where the conjunction of the huge stakes and the courts doing the right thing could occur. In other words, we could still dodge a really big bullet there. So, that might edge in your mind them up to a D- or whatever, but it's a big moment to watch.
We'll see. Keep you posted. That's what Harry Litman's here for. Subscribe to his Substack, his YouTube, his podcast. On YouTube right now, just search Talking Feds. Harry, I've seen just a surge in your views on YouTube, and that's because you provide the best legal analysis out. We're tied, actually. We tie for the best legal analysis out there.
There you go. And you help a lot, so I appreciate that. But yeah, it's these are troubled times, so we do what we can to keep keep people informed and motivated to stay the course, because that's everything.
That's for sure. Everybody hit subscribe. Let's get to 6 million subscribers. Thanks, everybody.
Want to stay plugged in? Become a subscriber to our Substack at MeidasPlus.com. You'll get daily recaps from Ron Filipkowski, ad-free episodes of our podcast, and more exclusive content only available at MeidasPlus.com.